Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and boy, is it hot outside. Oh my goodness, it's got to be 90 degrees here. I don't know. Let's ask my Sales SOS podcast crew, what's the weather like there? Renee.
Hi. It's hot here. I'm in New Orleans.
It's hot. Chris, where are you and how hot is it?
It is only 85. But the feels like is 94, and 2 days ago it was 105. So with the humidity, it's just it feels like you're walking through water.
I remember that when I lived in Japan. I used to say it was a rainforest. They cut down the trees and put up buildings, but it was the same effect. Like,
I mean,
there's a word for it. There's actually a word for it in Japanese. It's mushi atsui. Which is hot and sticky.
Well, that seems apropos.
It even sounds hot and sticky.
Right? Isn't it a great word, mushiatsu? All right. So I'm not sure if we have anybody in our room with us right now, but we are going to talk about sales in the summertime. And so we're going to have 4 episodes and hope you'll stay with us for all 4 of them. And I'm going to start the first one. And we're going to talk about the heat again. So you ready? Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with my Sales SOS podcast crew, your Sales SOS podcast crew, Renee Bigelow, who is a marketing genius, and Chris Bowen, who is an amazing sales leader. And we're here talking about summertime. And let me just start with, oh my goodness, it's hot. It is so hot here. It's got to be 90 degrees. And I'm headed to a baseball game tonight. It's going to be hot. and Renee, New Orleans.
Always hot this time of year. There's a definitely, and I think it's relative to our conversation today. There's a different pace in New Orleans this time of year because of the heat. And it's a 300 and something year old city. It's been part of the rhythms of the city for a long time. But I think it's very apropos for the discussion today about, part of why things move at a different speed in the summer.
Yeah. Chris, how about you? What are you seeing?
I definitely see things slow down during the summer. It's always hard to be able to get everybody you need together when on your schedule and things along those lines. So I think there's some flexibility that's needed. The weather certainly has probably a piece to do with it, but it's also all the other factors that come into this time of year.
So it's summertime. And if you're like most company leaders or sales leaders right now, you're looking around going, how do we get the most of this summer? And you're dealing with the things that we would expect. Hot weather that makes people sort of slow and I don't want to say lazy, but maybe not so active as usual. And we've got everybody takes vacation sometime during the summer. If you're selling into Europe right now, Europe's closed, right? It's just closed for a month. And, if you're dealing with vacations, you're dealing with kids out of school. So parents are a little less focused. You're dealing with hot weather or bad weather. And so how do you keep your sales on track? And, I'm just wondering, like, where do we start with this? Where do we start with, how do you keep things going?
Well, Liz, I will tell you, this is a spirited discussion sometimes when I talk with clients, and I will tell you, I've had CEOs tell me things don't slow down in the summer, and I get it. They have to drive and push to make sure that it doesn't, spiral further, 100%. But there is a cycle that I can prove to you in almost every single, particularly B2B business. B2C is going to change because people are doing things that can cause spikes, right, during the summer. So, but in B2B in particular, and since we're talking complex sale, it's going to land in a lot of B2B environments, right? I can just take a look at any of their data. I can look at dashboards and CRMs, and I can look in marketing dashboards. And I'll just use something simple like your Google Analytics, right? Like your website traffic. there's a pattern across every industry in B2B during July, August, somewhere in that window. It depends on when your return to school season is. So that's why it could be July in some parts of the country. It could be August in others. And then again, between Christmas and New Year. So generally about 5 to 7 days before Christmas into about 2 days after New Year, depending on when the day of New Year's is. If it falls on a Friday, then, that first Monday coming back is better. But if it falls midweek, then it's going to take you a couple more days to recover. And it looks like if you were in the hospital, like those businesses are flatlining almost during those periods. It is like a true trend line where you just see it take these big dips during those 2 periods. And it's universal across B2B. And it's for the exact same reasons that you talked about. The business industry may not have a cycle like retail has a cycle around Black Friday and the holidays, right? But the cycle is the decision makers and the people who would be researching and considering a lot of products. Their headspace is in a different place at that time. Like Chris said, vacations are happening. It's hard to get people together for consensus. A lot of people don't want to start projects right before they know they're going to be out. They will often close them and get them wrapped up, which is a good insight for the sales side, right? But you're going to see a lot of reduction in top of funnel during those times. So I'll just kind of set the stage with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Not only is it top of funnel, but it's all of a sudden people aren't answering phone calls, right? We're like calling and no one's answering their phones, and they normally answer when I call. Am I being ghosted? Are they just out of the office? Are they trying to work from home it's too hard to take phone calls? Like, what's going on?
Yeah. Well, another culprit for, there are a decent number of industries, because they're so busy in different times of the year, their trade shows and their conferences fall around summer. And if your industry is all at a conference, it gets crickets during your normal cycles unless you're there at that conference and building up activity there. I see that one regularly too.
Yeah. So Chris,
I think one of the things you end up seeing a lot in healthcare is because they're gearing up for open enrollment, which starts October 1. That means September is a dead month because you're basically trying to get everybody prepared for that. A lot of that flows into August. So now's the time. But because September also starts budget season for the following year, now's the time when people are working on their budgets for next year. And that's one of the ways I think to get people engaged in, if you understand how that industry cycle works, being able to say, hey, I know now's when they're trying to determine the budgets. Okay, let me see if I can find out what things they're considering, what things they think are most likely going to be above the line versus below the line, and being able to start to build relationships with the people who are going to be making those decisions. Even though that budget may not be allocated until January, if I start building those relationships now, set up our differentiators, understand what they're really trying to do, I'm going to be putting myself at least in a position to be part of that discussion, which is the first step. So, but I think that's what you have to do. You have to sort of piecemeal this stuff out. You're going to have multiple buyers as part of your committees for most purchases. So not everybody is going to be out all the time. So instead of having a meeting where you might have normally had 2 or 3 or 4 key stakeholders in that meeting, maybe it's 1 or 2. And you have to figure out how you're going to do that if you want to maintain momentum. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting there saying, "Oh, I can't get everybody together." Okay, well then don't get everybody together. Try to get who you can.
So, I want to stop there because I love that. This idea that we always want to get as many people in the room as possible for the discussion. I never really gotten it, because if I can have a conversation with you,
yeah,
I get to actually hear from you and all the things you're thinking and worried about. And it might take more phone calls, but if every conversation I have, except for the first one, is a demo with 6 people in the room and another conversation where you don't get that one-on-one with all the different players to understand what's going on. So maybe this is a great time to try to reach out to some of the other players, some of the other decision makers, and figure out what's going on with them, because they just may be in the office.
Well, and depending on the organizational culture, you can have a lot of people that may defer to the most senior person in the room or things like that when it's a larger group, which if you get them one-on-one, you can understand what their priorities are. What do they care about? What's competing for these funds, right? Because understanding that's really, really important. If you solve $1 million problem, but they need to solve a $500 million problem, guess what? You're probably not big enough. Probably not saving them enough at this point. So you got to be able to figure out what's really going on in the business. And I find that whatever you want to call it, I call it triangulation, but it's usually more than 3 factors. But you're trying to figure out, off of all the different things that I'm hearing, what does that actually mean for the business?
Okay, so first thing is not everybody's on vacation, right? So things may seem slower and some people may not be answering the phone, but some people are there working, right? So that's one thing that we could do to keep things from grinding to a halt.
I have 2 more. One is it's a slight delay, but if you know where they are and when their school season starts, you can gauge when some of those vacations are going to start slowing down. This goes to that point of when school starts, everybody does that push to, particularly with young kids, because there's no coverage for daycare and things like that, those couple weeks right before school often. So if you know when school starts back, when they're getting back into their more regular rhythms, at least a decent population within the company. And therefore, I would try to get on the calendars for any big meeting that you need to have, because that's so good. But those times are going to book up really fast because everybody's been putting things off. So that's one. It's a little bit of, working with the delay, but be the first one, that gets on the calendar for when that happens. And then additionally, I will say that to your point of some people are working, when there are less meetings, some people are more freed to finalize decisions. So if you're dealing directly with the CEO, for instance, which is a lot of my customers, their customer is the CEO of a company, they are often a little slower because their whole team is taking vacations or whatever. So they don't have as many standing meetings happening and can sometimes move projects forward. So one of my customers, that's one of the goals right now, is they have 3 large deals that they know that there are going to be some gaps during the summer, but they're going to close them during those non-gap times. Like when you said, when people are still there, they aren't out the whole summer, right? So it was a very strategic plan. And then we have queued up the next push to come right in mid to late August here, which is when that cycle kind of restarts for us. So,
yeah, don't put it off to September, right? Like we think September, everybody will be back in school, but actually in a lot of places it's not September, it's August.
In some places it's now like the end of July, the first few days of August. So, we're really getting really close to where the doldrum part is. We're in the depth of it now, right? Especially with World Cup and 4th of July and all of that, so it's really closer than it seems.
Yeah. What else can we do to keep things from ourselves from grinding to a halt during the summer?
I mean, I always think if there's people that you need to be connected to, try to figure out how to get connected to those people. If there's things that you can't do that are customer facing, then what are the things that you can do that are going to help you from an internal perspective? We've got a fairly large percentage of our team right now that's new. So it's build the relationships with your delivery people, build the relationships with other functions that you're going to need as you get closer and closer to deals, whether that's finance, whether that's HR in certain cases, things like that.
So hang on, let me just rephrase that. So there are lots of things we're going to talk in our next episode about the other things that we could be doing. But this idea that just because your buyers may not be answering and may not be in the office doesn't mean that your seller journey has stopped, right? So what can you be doing along the seller journey with this client to get ready for when they get back? And that's really important, because we think that the entire journey, the entire sales process is about interacting with the client. And it isn't necessarily. That's a really interesting one, Chris. I like that a lot.
I'll say yes and to that, Chris, and build on what you said, because I think it's really, really smart. Two things. One, it's very hard to do group entertaining right now, but because of that summer mindset, that one-on-one relationship extending into lunches, dinners, happy hours, taking advantage of the summer mentality to get people to relax and meet with you, I find is very successful this time of year. Like in a super busy meeting period, heavy period of time, people don't want to leave the office an hour early, but in summer, they might want to leave the office an hour early, and you can get them in a more relaxed environment and talking and really, sharing some information and build up that relationship like that. The other side of it, I would say, is internal. And that is, particularly if you're going to set all those meetings for August and come in ready to go and be the first one in line and all of that, you got some internal work to do. You probably need materials from marketing. You probably need to talk with your product team, maybe finance, like making sure you have all those steps addressed, because those departments, internal departments, are also dealing with vacations and so forth. So you want to be kind of first in line for those too. And I would triage rather than hit them with everything when they have short staff timings, like triage and make sure you're taking to them the first and the most important things instead of just dumping everything and saying I'm going on vacation. Like I would say those two sides of that one-on-one and checking the boxes, the pre-boxes, as you both put it, those two sides of it, I think, help you get much better success too.
I love that. I love that. I love thinking about the sales process and all of the things that have to happen that we always just put off, right? I'll get to that when we get to this point in the sales process, then I'll get to that, right? And then it's overnight. I need it right now. I've got to have it tomorrow morning at 6 a.m., right? And your team is then frustrated with you.
I used to have a sales, really, really fantastic salesperson I worked with who took a big vacation every year. But before she took that vacation, and she did it because of the childcare gap with young kids, she did it those couple of weeks before school started. But she knew when she came back that she could get into meetings and things like that, because the start of the school year is almost to people, because as Chris pointed out, because of business cycles, it's almost that same reset period as New Year's, right? We have budget cycles and business cycles and things, and we're rejuvenated because we've been out of our sync and our calendar and our normal rhythms, and we're getting back into rhythm. We're committing again after that summer brain or being out, right? So she used that reset time as like very intentional. She made all of her appointments and everything way out so that nobody could argue with setting an appointment 2 months from now, right? Like they couldn't claim their calendar was as full. And then she did all the internal work of getting it all lined up and like made sure that she had presentations ready for it. Nothing changed when she was taking this, 3-week vacation. The story wasn't changing for any of these. She got it all done before she came. So she came back refreshed from her own vacation with appointments lined up and all the materials she need, and hit go. It was always so impressive to me to see how organized she was with that.
I think just understanding, I mean, again, I think we all you have to take that time for yourself and to be able to recharge, being able to maximize what you're going to be able to do. I think one of the things I hear when you're talking through that is she also offloaded a lot of things that would have normally been on her plate and possibly causing her to have more stress or something like that. She's taken care of all of that. So now she gets to actually disconnect and really not have to focus on all those other things because she's checked all those boxes, right?
Yeah,
so
I mean, she had, like, to your points, customers would email or maybe call or whatever while she was gone, but she had no other side work for her pipeline that she had to do while she was gone. It was just service, anything service related that would interrupt her vacation. Sure. I mean, I had such admiration for her discipline around it.
It's amazing.
Well, discipline's an important part of this role, whether people realize it or not.
It really is. And I think part of it though, if things are moving a little slower, if clients are a little slower in responding, it's a good time to go outside, like take a walk. Like even if you're working, maybe, you want to go and enjoy the sunshine for a few minutes, or, go sit outside at a coffee shop and work. if you're not on the phone, maybe use that time to, while you're doing that other stuff, to enjoy the summer. So you don't feel like the summer passed and I sat in my office the whole time and didn't get anything done, right?
It's a great time for like internal strategy meetings too.
Let's go to that. Let's stop there and let's talk about that in our next episode, because I think that's a really important next topic. So, thanks for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and we hope you'll join us for the next episode. Perfect lead in. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I'm with Renee Bigelow and Chris Bowen. And boy, are we hot. It is so hot where we are. And we're talking about summertime. In our last episode, we were talking about how, it's hard when everything is halted during the summer. And I'm wondering, like, okay, so if the selling part's a little bit harder during the summer, what other things should the sales team be working on during the summer that maybe they wouldn't have time to work on during the winter or during other times that are super hectic? And Renee, you were talking to us about strategy. I'd love to hear what you were thinking about jumping into strategy.
So particularly, I think when you deal with exec level, I think that one is really key. Again, because the normal rhythms are broken, there's time for longer meetings. If a standing meeting's not happening today because there aren't enough people, then maybe your strategy meeting can go a little longer. You can slide in a meeting where there wasn't an opening before. I think Chris brought up earlier in our last episode the budget cycle and how that comes up, and it's like coming in just as everybody's coming back for most organizations. Many organizations put it off to November, December, but for a lot of organizations, as Chris pointed out, if they have a fourth quarter fiscal year or if they plan further out, then that's even more important to start those strategy conversations sooner before budget conversations hit, so that you know what you need to be putting in budgets, right? So strategizing for customer, like big customer wins, like that, those are things that often you don't have as much time for, that maybe you take the time for, but also like, are there a tool we need in order to hit things, strategizing at a higher level, like department level too, and cross-functional. Like we're really seeing this in the market. What can marketing do to help us get this message more clear or get more out here or help us differentiate? This is the feedback we're getting when we go on calls. Those are all great topics to be strategizing around. But I find also, if you deal with the CEOs, as I said, like you can get decisions made in the summer often for one key reason. And it's one of the reasons that if I look back on my own patterns, where I end up getting leads every year, and generally in about August, sometimes somewhere between July and September. And that's because they've seen the results of the first half of the year. And because of that, you get a little bit of a renewed focus on different things. So you can renew focus based on what you're seeing, or you're going to get possibly someone dictating to you some focus around what should happen based on those results from the first part of the year.
So couple different kinds of strategy we talked about, right? One kind of strategy is, this is a good time to talk about your largest accounts. Things are a little bit quiet. They're probably not calling on you as often as usual. It's a good time to step back and look at these larger accounts and think about, what do we want to get done with them for the rest of the year? And what do we want to accomplish next year? Like, we always wait until December or January to do that. Like, this is a great time to do that. It's also a great time to stop and look at your overall strategy for your company. Like, here's what we learned the first half of the year. Is there anything that we need to change in the second half of the year? I think that's super important. And then I think deal strategies, it's a great time for deal strategies, right? Everything is kind of quiet. Let's make a plan for when things get busy again. What are the things? What's the information that's still missing? Who are the people you still need to talk to? What are the objections you still need to handle? What's it going to take to actually close this deal? What are the things that we can do to either give it some momentum or maybe get it to close earlier? So it's a great time for all three of those kinds of strategies. Chris, what are other things that it's a good time
I
to
have
do?
something that's not going to be particularly sexy or fun or even moving a deal forward, but it will keep things from getting in the way later. We have a lot of trainings that we have to do from a corporate perspective that are compliance related and things like that. If those happen in September is when they're due, but you've already got them on your plate in this slow period of time, knock those things out. They're usually not overly heavy, but they're time consuming. And what you don't want to have happen is something where it's like you're getting ready to hopefully really hit a heavy push for a particular deal or set of deals. And then it's, oh, you have to complete this training by this day, or it could be a corporate issue, it could be a federal issue, whatever it happens to be, depending on how your clients are organized. Just knock that stuff out. Like, get rid of all the stuff that's going to potentially take up time later that is non-value add or limited value add. But it's going to take away your time.
Great time to sit outside and do it. Like if it's not too hot out, you could do the corporate training on your laptop while you're sitting by the pool. Don't take it in the pool because computers and pools don't go well together. But
not well, no.
Right? It's a great thing to do and enjoy the weather.
Yeah, well,
Chris, you said I was like so excited when you said training because it is a great time for training. I will add a little caveat to it. Some departments are going to be super short-staffed and doing a lot of coverage for other people.
Yep.
So in order to get the training done and not overburdened during short staff periods, I sometimes convert the department meeting into training time. Because a lot of people are gone and you're going to have to recover what you would cover. And so if we schedule it properly and plan out, we can convert a department meeting, a 60 to 90-minute meeting that would have happened, once a week or once a month or whatever the rhythm is, and convert that into everybody come in and let's get a training knocked out.
Yep. I mean, and it's also if your solution mix has changed, I think one of the things, because we go through a fair number of reorgs internally, understanding if there's people that are in new spots within the company that you might not have been notified. I mean, we've got 100,000 people, so you're not going to know everybody that moves around or anything along those lines. Do you actually know who your key people to talk to within different service lines are? Do you know who your key sales overlays are for different solutions? Being able to make sure you understand that, because when you need them, you don't want to be trying to guess through that stuff. It's early on, you spend way too much time going through that type of effort that is non-value add, but trying to chase people down is just not fun. But you have to do it. But
I have a fun story that kind of builds on what you both shared, Liz, about you making it fun, right? Making it, in theme with summer, right? And Chris, to your point about like product mix or reorg mix or whatever. When I worked in television, obviously in broadcast TV anyway, the upfronts, the new season start is huge. And that happens just at the time as everybody's coming back from summer vacations, right? So you got to get your team on a whole new product and everything while they're having vacations and everything else too. So we used to do a lot of like meetings became games of Jeopardy and in meeting contests and all around like making sure that they had the new lineup memorized and then, what was new about it, what was different in day parts, what we could expect with audience, all of those different things that were changing, and were changing so fast right as the business cycle was changing too. It was just adding that gamification to training, as you said.
Yep. And I think anything that you can knock out that's going to take up your time later is important when it's slower, because you're not going to be able to change 100% of that. The other thing I think is understanding within your clients. So certainly you're going to know who the execs are and maybe the next click or two down, but there's always other people that have influence in those organizations on niche topics, and being able to understand who has that influence. Are those people in? You can start to build those relationships. I think there's a lot more that you can do that like I said isn't necessarily the funnest or the sexiest part of the job, but actually will help move things smoother down the line.
So here's another one nobody wants to talk about, but let's throw it out there. We set our plan for the year, and we pretended that summer was going to be just like the rest of the year, and we set our quotas just like that. And so now the sales team's looking at their numbers and going, I'm behind. So it's a really great time to do a gap plan, right? Here's the gap between where you thought you were going to be and where you really are in this moment. So what does it take then to actually get you back to where you need to be and to get you to the rest of the, to finish out the year strong? So while things are a little slower and the phones aren't ringing as much and your clients aren't needing as much, it's a really good time to think about gap planning. And it's a great time to use your fellow salespeople to help you think through your gap plan, right? Do it together, don't do it alone. I don't know. What do you guys think of that?
I love it. I really love it. And I will add one little thing that, I mean, obviously with my role, forward thinking and being ahead of a pipeline is, at the very beginning of a pipeline is a big focus of mine. So I'll add to that. Whenever I see gap planning happen, I start planning around that gap, what you would be doing for the sales gap for the rest of the quarter or the rest of the year. I start projecting that to next year and start proactively figuring out how we can improve the beginning of that journey or the pipeline, right? Before we're getting to this moment. Like one of the key takeaways I can give you is one of my recent clients. I started with them at about a year ago, about 3 weeks before their biggest industry trade show happened, and trade show and conference happened in the middle of the summer. And all of a sudden it just went completely quiet, and exactly what you were talking about. Now we're talking about gap planning. We're like, oh my gosh, did the floor just fall out? What happened? And immediately before we even got into the rest of the quarter, I started drafting up what we need to do for next year before that conference hit, so that we didn't have this gap. So how could we pre-sell for the month before they leave for the conference? Basically just using the moment, projecting that forward to next year, not just to help meet the quarter.
I think it's a great idea. Any other thoughts? Like, what are some other things we could be doing during the summer when things are a little slower and maybe we have a few extra minutes?
I tend to look at, again, I think it's educate yourself on are there changes in your customer's business that you're going to need to know? Are there changes in your business that you need to know? Are you rolling out any new products, let's say in the next 6-8 months, because that might be the lead time that you're having to deal with anyway for something that's net new. Do you know where we're at from a organizational perspective, because that's going to tell you where some of the pressure is going to be coming from, right? So your business unit might be doing well, or if the organization's not doing well, then they're still going to be looking for you to do some uplift, and you're going to have a plan for that. I think it's just, again, it's always try to maximize your time. And if you see a period where hey, look, I don't have customer meetings, I don't have a lot going on, maybe you should take a week or whatever it happens to be. Like, it's a good time for you to take vacation too. If your customers aren't around, make sure you do that. I try to be on site wherever I can during this period of time, because if you can catch people live, then I think you can uncover a whole lot more than just being remote. So
I love the idea of using the time to go do research on your existing clients, right? So what's changing in their organizations? What are their big initiatives for next year? How many other divisions are there that I haven't thought about? Who else can I get introductions to? Those are all really great things to do when things are a little slow, because sometimes as a sales rep, it's so busy, you don't have time to stop and think. And it is so powerful to actually step back and think, research, ponder.
I think it gives you a lot of ammunition from a credibility perspective when you're in those next set of discussions, right? Don't give me generic talking points at an industry level. You can, but how does that apply to my company specifically is going to carry a lot more weight. I just think that's how you have to look at it. Like I go through this with healthcare payers all the time, where it's like, the size of the payer just indicates the the size of the problem, but they're all the same. But there's probably 5-6 things that are going to be your biggest priorities across all of them. Now, the way individual organizations prioritize those 6 is going to vary, sometimes dramatically, but they're all solving the same problems. And so it's, where does this matter to them? And I think that's really, really important for you to be able to understand that, because barking up the wrong tree is an easy way for you to maybe get some activity, but you're probably going to get below the line initiatives.
No, but it's also a great, like, to build on that, it's also a great time to think about, what does my funnel look like? Do I remember what all of those deals are? Do I remember what happened with each one of those? It's a great time to stop and look at every deal that's in your pipeline and go, is this real or not real? What are the next actions on it? Do I have all the notes on it? Is there anything more I need to know on it?
What is it? Even what's the gap in, based on what I know now? Can I see a path to closing that deal? If not, what's missing? Right? Is it because I don't have a connect with the right person or right people? Is it because our strategy is slightly misaligned? How do we get it more aligned or move their strategy? One or the other or both, right? You have to do, sometimes it's most of the time I tell people all the time, it's like, most of the time you're not looking at 180-degree adjustments that you have to make. You're looking at 5 or 10 degrees is what you're doing. And sometimes if you can get them to move a little and you move a little, maybe you've made that gap, right? So it's just a matter of really understanding what's the flexibility that you have. And
you clearly have never golfed with me, because you would then know it was never just 5 degrees that needs to be fixed. Yeah, and which leads us into our next conversation, right? The next conversation in our next episode I want to have is about restarting deals that are stalled over the summer. But you know what? If we spend a little time with our funnel and think about, this one's stalled, what do I need to do? That's a great starting place. So let's wrap this conversation up and let's jump into that next one. Thanks, folks, for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast, and I hope you will join us for our next episode. And if you are looking for a little help with your sales or marketing, you can find all of us on LinkedIn. So find us there and let's have a conversation. Okay, ready? Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with Renee Bigelow and Chris Bowen, and we are fighting the heat. It is a hot summer day for all of us, and we're talking about, what do you do during summer when things slow down? And we've had a couple of episodes to talk about that, and today we're going to talk about, how do you get things restarted? So one of the things we know about sales more than anything else is that losing momentum is really hard. It's like riding your bike uphill and you stop for a second. How do you get that bike moving again? Well, deals are like that. The moment you lose momentum, you have a problem. And now you have to start over and get the momentum going again. So let's talk about, for anything that has stalled over the summer, that people canceled at the last minute because kids were sick, or, oh, we're going to go on vacation, or whatever happened, and those deals sort of stalled with no next plan. What do we do? And I think it's a great opportunity to talk about how marketing can help. Renee.
Well, I'm actually going to, first I want to share like a personal story that connects back to this, because this is one way that I think they stall a lot. I think that it's often under-recognized how much job movement, how much career job movement there is in that summer window.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of people who switch jobs around this time of year. And I'm saying it's a personal story because I can go back through, if I were to look at my resume, I think almost every job would say August, September for a start date. So, and it probably is a little bit out of summer for some people, but it's pretty close, right? And I was already kind of out the door. I had probably given notice by June or July in most of those. So part of that restarting the deal is, I think you alluded to this in our last episode, of doing an audit of what's going on with your customer and finding out any movement. Because there's also internal promotions and things like that happen. And Chris alluded to in our episode earlier today, You talked about reorgs happening in his industry and his company, that they happen a lot. Getting that matrix, if you will, of who's moved and also to where, because you might need them to go back. You might need to reach out to them and see if they'll pass along good work. Like, are they still in good graces? Can they get like do a little bit of a handoff to somebody else, even though they've already left? Making sure that you do that transfer is really key to getting that deal back, that deal momentum back, right? The seats are changing. People in the seats are changing. So I think when you talked about momentum slowing over the summer, that's one of the first ones that pops in my mind, is the actual people in the seats moving around.
That's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. What else can we do to get the momentum going again?
I think the first is understand why it stalled in the first place, and then being able to revisit. Okay, we were talking about this. This is what bring it back to the problem they were trying to solve. Here's what you were doing. Is this still a priority? How do we revisit this? I don't like the whole circling back sort of nomenclature, as I know we all.
Just following up. I'm just following up. I'm just checking in.
Just putting this at the top of your inbox so I can ignore it again. Yeah, no, thanks, please. No, but if you can bring it back to whatever their problem was, is this validating whether or not is this still a priority, and bring it back to if there was any open items, make sure you close those things out, because I think that's part of how you end up building credibility. But make sure you do that and then move forward with it from there. That's how I like to re-engage. But it's always focused on what was the problem you were trying to solve and making sure that you're able to get that nailed down. I try to hopefully avoid that issue by saying, when they move a meeting or cancel a meeting, or it starts to slow, hey, we're going to be out we're not going to be able to do this for the next month. Okay, well, can we get something on the calendar penciled in at that point? That way it's already there and you've already got a reason to go to talk, instead of trying to start something up, which can always take a little bit more time. I have some customers that it can be a month and a half before I'm going to get on certain people's calendars. So it's like being able to understand, okay, if I'm not going to be able to do that, let me do it now. And if it's going to be, hey, it's going to be 2 months out. Okay, well, at least it's on the calendar. You know when it's going to start back up. But I think
this is the time of year. There's a couple times a year when I hear salespeople really saying, I'm being ghosted, which is not a term I like to use anyway, but that's what they'll say. Like, oh, all summer they didn't talk to me. Now it's September or late August, and they're not answering. And I'm like, yeah, because they were off and their kids were home, and now they have a ton of work to make up and a whole bunch of phone calls and all these people trying to reach them. And so maybe they're not ghosting you. They just, don't give up.
When I was in a different role, I'd get 300, 400, 500 emails a day, internal emails, external emails, vendors reaching out to me, things along those lines. When you get back, like, trying to prioritize that stuff, you want to, but there's going to be things that fall through the cracks and things that are just not going to rise up when you're slammed. Doesn't mean it's not an issue. Doesn't mean you don't want to address it. It's just not going to be your priority at that point. So you got to be able to, I think, battle through some of that as a seller and being able to understand, hey, I know you want to make it all about you, but it's not always about you. Most of the time it's not.
No. And what's really interesting is we give up on those people. Like, we just give up. They're obviously not interested. And so we focus on the people who are reaching out to us, and we forget that those people, we still need to reach back out to them. We still need to see if there's an opportunity instead of just giving up. So give them a couple more weeks. Don't write them off because in September and early fall, they weren't available. Okay.
Liz, you asked earlier, what can marketing do to help? I have a few that address this. Okay. One is, if you've already identified that you need to audit the deal and figure out what stalled it, right? When you figure out what those whys, I offered one, which is people moving seats. When you figure out why, you need to put those in a document and go to an email, a document, whatever, and go to marketing. And you need to sit down with somebody in the marketing team and ask what assets we have that address these specific things, right? And you need to turn that into a form of sales enablement that is a more passive campaign that you use during this time where you're simply not going to get them. To Chris's point earlier, not everybody's on vacation for that whole month and a half. And they may not want to have a meeting with you because they're short-staffed and they're dealing with coverage issues and whatever else, but they likely will read or review things, right? Like that 500 emails, you're not going to see it on day, you're not going to engage with it and set a meeting with somebody on day one when you come back and you have 3,000 emails to go through, right, Chris?
Right.
But you would flag something to go back to, right? If it solved your problem and was relevant, right?
Yeah, I keep this is probably not what we need to talk about, but I keep a system that's basically like things that are immediate, things that have to be dealt with in the next couple of days, things that have to be dealt with this week, next 2 weeks, this month, that sort of thing. And then at some point in the future, and I review that periodically, regularly. That way I can move those things along and move things between those buckets.
Exactly. So your crisis, your deal has slowed down is not my problem. It's the customer, right? I have my own problems on my end that aren't yours, right? So during that time, address my problems, but do it in a way that that syncs with my schedule, and bring all this to me and keep it going so that it does land in your example, Chris, in the I need to keep things moving forward box. I don't have to deal with it today, but I need to keep it moving forward. And your marketing team probably already has some of these assets. And if they don't, you've now helped them figure out something that they can help you fill a gap for, right? I'm doing one right now with a customer where as I do an audit, which is this is a time of year I do a lot of marketing audits too, depending on the customer and their cycle. But if the CEO is going to be out of town for 2 weeks, then I use that time to do other things because I can't move other things forward without them. So I'll do a lot of audits and things like that. If I've already done an audit and realized there's a gap, I'll go on and start working on the piece that fills that gap. And one I recognized is we didn't have a good public asset or document that explained what onboarding looks like at this customer. When I went through that audit, that's what I realized. So I immediately said to the COO, who's in charge of that whole step, as soon as you come back from vacation, can I just get 30 minutes on your calendar where I can interview you and I can work on this? It was as simple as that. And he actually said, actually, I tell you what, that sounds fun and easy. I'm going to do it the day before I leave because it's not a project I have to start. So I got him even sooner and was able to write it all up and get the team working on it before he came back. So it was all there and ready for him to review. So again, identifying that gap that's not there or the assets that you have, and a quick powwow between a good marketer and a good salesperson, you should be able to work on a really good drip campaign that's sales enablement, taking those assets and dripping them through at the right pace to the people that you know you can't get full attention from right now, but you know that the deal shouldn't completely die out. It's not going to always reactivate the momentum, but it can keep that backlash from happening further.
I think it's a great time for a card, right? If you know the address where they'll physically be, which is harder and harder these days, right? You get back from vacation, you've got 3,000 emails, you've got piles of stuff you got to deal with, and there's a card on your desk. That's fun and light, and hope you had a great summer, ready to talk when you are, whatever. Just, it's a great time for something like that. For marketing, it's a good time if we can figure out why were people excited about this in the first place, and some sort of tool that reminds them why they were so excited about this in the first place. Because, we get into the sales process, buying process, and a lot of times we forget why we were excited because we're just dragged down by all the details that we have to do to get it done and get everything else done.
Another piece of it, I would say, is not just the assets that you have, right? Because it's still me. If I'm sending assets about us, about our company and our brand, it's also because they've been covering for short staff and coverage for vacation coverage and everything else. It's also passing along articles and research and industry-wide things that affect them that aren't about you, right, as part of that drip campaign during that time, because it's very hard for them to keep up with the news and read all the newsletters and the whatever when they've been on vacation. So if you're the person that's like, I know there's a lot you probably missed while you were out and you haven't read all your newsletters, because why would you do that when you're on vacation? Here's the one thing I thought was really important you would probably want to see. right? Like that's doing real value to that landing in Chris's, I need to do this, not today, but I need to do it soon.
I think anything that you can do that's going to make their job easier,
Yeah.
you should look at how you can do that, right? So if it's, hey, I know that this particular organization has a certain investment threshold from a rate of return that they're looking for. Right? If I'm able to do some of that financial analysis and get some of that stuff out of the way, it's always a little bit heavier lift than you think it's going to be. But if I can come in with something that's going to show them, here's how this is going to pay for it, I'm giving them the ammunition that they're going to need when they go further up the chain in their organization. So how are you making it easier for them? Those things that are going to take longer, not my current company, but a previous company, it would take us 3 weeks to generate quotes. Baffling to me. But it would take, so if you know you're going to have that, maybe now you start working on it. If it's a straw man, it's a straw man, but do what you have to do in order to get those things in your back pocket so that you're not having to delay things when they're ready to move. Because the other thing that also happens during this period of time for things that are actually important is you have this lull during the summer when people aren't around. But when they get back, that thing that was sort of slow is now an emergency, right? It's now critical. I need this now because let's say it's August and our first budget cycle starts September 1, and I need to have it before I go in there, and I need to vet that with a number of people internally. Okay, you don't want to be the person scrambling to try to do it at that point because maybe your internal resources aren't going to be available or whoever helps you with that, right? So there's a lot of those things that can be long poles in the tent. You need to make sure that you've got those things as easily managed as possible to make your customer's life easier down the line.
I think it's even deeper than that, or more critical maybe is the thing to say. Can work this both ways. One, if you're the one that's prepared, like you're talking about, like what you might need to do because of internal resources and everything, how many deals all of a sudden just do a complete 180 because somebody came to the table prepared at the right moment, right? So you may have had all the momentum for months, people go on vacations, do whatever, they come back and all of a sudden the vibe is different and somebody happens to get to them at just the right time and they come in completely prepared and swoop away all that momentum from you. So there's that, being prepared for that. You want to combat that by being as prepared, not just for the internal reason, but for the external reason. But secondly, that's an opportunity. You could be the one swooping in.
Yep. We, as a side note to that, we had a deal, this is going back 15 years ago, where there was an RFP that was due at this customer on a Friday. Reaching out to them, they weren't our customer yet, but they were. It was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. We ended up getting included into that RFP, which we were not originally. I had to pull a whole team together in order to respond to it by that Friday. We ended up winning that deal. Our primary competition had been in there for 6 months, working, trying to get it. We were in the right. We made the right call at the right time, but it was also a portion of it was us being able to get the resources together to be able to produce that thing in 4 days. Also impressed them a bit, so it helped us on that front of being able. We can turn things around quickly when we need to.
I'm preaching to the choir here. You both are in sales, and you know this. It literally is who's standing in front of me right now and has the right thing, right?
Right. A lot of times. I mean, that's why you always want to be top of mind when they go to try to solve a particular problem. You want to be top of mind. I always look at it as you want to be part of the consideration set for the problems that you can solve. And the ones that you do really well, you should be able to position it to where it's set up for you. But even in the ones where you're maybe not, where it's more competitive, you got to be part of the solution set, otherwise, or the consideration set, or else you're not going to win a whole lot of business. So,
yeah.
And you only do that by constant outreach.
There you go. Well, it's summertime and the weather, although it's hot, it's beautiful outside. So I think we are going to wrap up this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. And we have one more episode talking about summertime that we're going to jump into right now. So join us in our next session as we talk about staying visible, which is what Chris just led us into. So let's talk about that. Thanks for joining us for this episode. Everybody have a great day, and we'll be back next week. Okay. Ready? How do I keep my team engaged and visible during summer? I think this one's pretty quick. Boy, it's way faster when there's not 6 of us.
We all can get a little chatty.
Well, everyone has something to say. It's hard to, yeah. These are good.
That's the good thing. I mean, like you said, when you did the stuff on our content, where the thought leadership was really good. It just the engagement wasn't necessarily 100% there all the time. So, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay. Hey, welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I'm here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Renee Bigelow and Chris Bowen, and we are fighting the summer heat and enjoying it. I love summertime. I don't know about you guys, but I love summertime. And but it's not the easiest time to be selling. It's one of the things that salespeople complain about. Everything slows down in the summer, and it's hard sometimes to keep our salespeople engaged and involved and visible during the summer. So let's talk about what are things you can do to help keep your sales team engaged with you, engaged with customers who are maybe not engaging the way they normally do, and visible. Like if our customers aren't necessarily there, if they're on vacation or if they're working part-time during the summer, or they're covering for other people during the summer, how do we stay visible with them during that time? So I'm going to throw that out. Renee, let's start with you again, because I think marketing can help with this a lot. But
well, I'll start with just a couple. Again, I kind of start with some personal anecdotes because I think it opens up the lens a little bit. One of the things I do this time of year is, especially if you have a lot of vacation coverage happening and you get a little short-staffed, and that happens in marketing because it's already lean in most organizations anyway, and marketing work is never done. Kind of like sales, is never done. So I like to shake things up. I like to move things out of office. I like to do it differently. I like to, have a meeting at an ice cream parlor, or do something to lean into. The people who are still there are often jealous of the people who are away, or they're thinking about their own vacation, or they're tired from coming back from their vacation that was a trip more than it was a vacation. So kind of shaking it up a little bit. I think you earlier talked about, if it's not too hot, get outside and touch grass and maybe do a training outside or work on your report while you're outside or something like that. But, shaking it up in a group environment, I think does a lot too for that, keeping people engaged. If I can't get them out of the office for one reason or another, sometimes the location makes that harder or whatever, then I sometimes bring ice cream or snowballs or things like that in. So, very summertime, lean into it, make it a little FOMO. If I had to be in the office, at least there was something to miss out on. So I'd say that's one that I lean into a lot on keeping people engaged. But the other would be, you talked about keeping your salespeople visible. Again, I'll share a personal anecdote. I generally have a very booked calendar, but in the summertime, I often find gaps because the CEOs I work with are on vacation, or the marketers I work with are on vacation, or projects get stalled or whatever. And I find my own personal calendar opens up, and I try to get out and do local events and professional things, or travel and do professional things that I don't normally have the time to do. And I set a goal each week to be more visible in person or in a group setting during this time because of that, right? Because my schedule is a little bit different. I fill those gaps as much as possible with a way to be visible. And I think when you can send a salesperson if they don't have as many sales calls, send them into a room. A good salesperson ends up with something if they're in the room with people. It's just, it doesn't always reach the prioritization when their pipeline is really full. So, those are two that I think are great ways to stay engaged and visible.
What are you thinking, Chris?
I think, again, if you go with a calendar year for your fiscal, you're a little over halfway through the year at this point. It's a good time for you to have real one-on-one discussions with your team at this point of the year. Be able to understand, where are they at, what are they doing, what do they need help on, what do you see that they need help on? Because a lot of people, the easiest person to lie to is yourself, right? So let's highlight some of those things that they may need to work on. Where can you help? Those types of things. Be able to help on that internal front. And then I think on the customer side, again, I think it's there aren't a ton of, like, for healthcare, there's not a ton of conferences during the summer. They tend to happen more spring, fall. But I also think, like, if you're looking at things that are coming up, are you starting to position yourself with those customers now? I always look at, for an event, ideally, I want to have at least 2 months ahead of time so that I can plan a dinner or happy hour or whatever it is that we're going to be able to do at that event. Get the right people there, get both a mixture of prospects and customers, because I prefer letting existing customers sell to my prospects. It's a lot easier and a lot less stressful than us having to do all the heavy lifting ourselves. So if you have good customers that are coming to those events, things like that, leverage that. Make sure you're taking advantage of those word of mouth sort of opportunities. But I do a lot of refocus on the plan for what's got to happen in the second half of the year. What things did we get right? What things did we get wrong? And then communicate that out to the team, because I tend to think my teams aren't dumb. So let's get them included so they understand where the thought process is. Sometimes they'll have different ideas. Let's figure out what those things are going to look like. If there's things that we have to do in particular markets differently, then let's figure that out. That's also a lot with marketing and things along those lines. But making sure that feedback loop's coming back between the two organizations, or two parts of the organization.
Well, I love the idea that it's a great time for one-on-one time, right? If you want to keep your salespeople engaged, sending them off to do we talked about doing a gap plan, right? Sending them off to do that by themselves is not very engaging, and it's not a lot of fun, right? But to say, hey, let's do it. Let's spend a little time thinking about it together. What a great time to do that, right? If there's a little bit more time, if the phone is not ringing as much as it normally does, if clients don't need, or prospects don't need all the answers right now, it's a great time to spend time and coach. And also might be fun to go someplace else and do it, right? Let's go to the park. Let's go have cocktails. Well, you probably don't want to have cocktails while you're working, but let's have cocktails anyway. Or, breakfast or whatever, someplace fun, someplace.
Well, and if you're able, and not everybody's going to be able to do this, but if you're able to get your team together in a place, even for a short offsite or something like that, that can be a way for you to energize the team, get everybody sort of motivated for the second half of the year push while it's a little bit slower. There's plenty of little things that you can do. We've got people in every time zone, so it's sometimes hard to pull everybody together. But I think if you're able to plan those things out far enough ahead of time, it works the same way as it does with clients.
Yeah. What about being visible? What about staying somehow in front of clients who are a little more distracted?
I always look at what's the level of thought leadership and stuff like that you're able to push towards them. So maybe it's not exactly related to the deal, but it's maybe adjacent to it. And being able to push some of that material out to them, similar to what I think Renee had mentioned earlier. But it's like, hey, I was going through this. These are the 2 or 3 things that I think matter most to you in your role within this business, right? I don't necessarily, if I'm sending them something that's like an 8-page HBR article, I'm not expecting that they're going to have time to read it. Here's why I thought of you. Here's why I thought this would be important to you. And if you do that periodically, then eventually, I think initially they probably always look at it as a little cheesy. I sometimes do. But I think if they see you do it consistently, eventually you start to be someone that they think of as more of that thought leader, thought partner on those types of topics.
Yeah. And maybe they don't want to read a proposal right now, or they don't want to get hounded about when you're going to do the next thing, but maybe they do have a minute to read something or watch a video, or right. Oh, Renee, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I'll add one topic in on that. It doesn't always have to be like heavy thought leadership. one that I do for former customers is I keep my alerts and my intelligence running on their industry and their competitors. And if a competitor makes a move and I know it's possible that they've missed that, I just send, hey, wanted to make sure you saw this, right? If there's something big that happened in the industry, sure, or something like that. But it's more like trigger based than like thought based, if you will. Like, hey, your competitor just opened an office here, came up in my alerts, they're still running, blah, blah, blah. I've moved most of it over to AI now, but I have found amazing sales enablement type things. I mean, it crosses into marketing a lot too, but by being able to be on top of that, from the marketing perspective, if I'm getting those really early, particularly if it's something that's happening in the industry, I can jump on that faster, prepare the sales team faster, get assets out there faster. And I'm the one that people, as they even know to start looking for information and figure out how to deal with, I'm the source that's coming up. I just did that last year with a whole industry crisis with one of my clients, and we saw it coming. And I mean, got something, as Chris, as you said, with that RFP earlier, talking about getting it out the door in 4 days. We rolled out a whole push to a market in 4 days as things were coming down with a deadline that was impacting the whole country. And we were able to snap up way more market share than we would have been because the sales team was completely prepared with those intelligence reports coming every day.
I think one of the things is also if you look at it, if the shoe's on the other foot from your competitor perspective, if their salespeople are disengaged a bit during the summer, this is a really good time for you to differentiate yourself there.
I'm watching your back.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if they're behaving in a way that, let's say, is semi-typical, you coming in, being engaged, putting your best foot forward, I think is going to differentiate you in those rooms too. So it's, again, it'll pay off a little bit later. It's not always going to pay off immediately, but it will pay off. So
I think LinkedIn might be a good tool to use during the summer too, because people can kind of linger over it a little bit longer. Oh, I'm sitting here with my phone and my kids are running around. Maybe I'll look at LinkedIn, right? And they can actually spend a little time. They might be able to read an article or comment on something you posted on, which maybe normally they just don't have the time to do it. So,
Liz, I'll add on that. I actually often run employee advocacy campaigns in the summer because the fourth quarter and first quarter can be really, really hard. So it tends to fall second and third quarter. And honestly, it just doesn't get prioritized in second quarter a lot of times. So it ends up falling in third quarter. Makes it challenging because of vacations, because I'm trying to do training and everything else. But I will tell you, in doing that employee advocacy and training the teams throughout a company to be more proactive externally, and talking about the brand and sharing about the brand, I am always shocked at the number of salespeople who are not proactively, externally sharing the same things that they share internally. Meaning they spend all this time writing this wonderful thing that they send to one client when there are 30 people who could really benefit from it if they happen to put it out for the world. So I think your point about LinkedIn is great. And it's kind of, we even talked earlier about training, right? It's kind of a marriage of the two. You could start improving those reps on LinkedIn, right? With putting these things that you're putting in these emails out for the rest of the world to see too. You change the perspective of it somewhat, so that it's more general than the one person you're sending it to, but you get those reps in and you get more used to it. And to your point, now you're getting visible at a time where it's works in your favor with the amount of time people spend within the algorithm and the fewer people creating in the algorithm.
Yeah, I think so. And remember too, that if you're commenting on other people's stuff, you're actually getting more visibility. So if you do that and then you post, your clients are more likely to see it. So it's a great time if you're sitting around waiting for kids to finish a softball game or ice skating practice in the summer, which you do because you're in the mall ice skating, right? All those things that you're sitting around waiting for. It's a great time to do it.
It's an easy challenge to just farm from your own outbox the things that you are sending to people, and what of the things that you have sent could other people benefit from, and how would you just reword that for public consumption?
Absolutely. Anything else? Is there anything else we can do that keeps us in front of our clients or helps salespeople stay engaged and not kind of?
Well, I hit on gamification earlier in another topic around, we were talking about summer. I do think gamification over summer is a really great tool, to your point, where sometimes we get off, like get off targets and our quota is not where it wants to be or whatever. Short run contests or things that can be impacted in a short period of time in between people taking vacations or whatever can be very powerful. I never, ever again will underestimate the power of doing gamification with a prize to win with salespeople.
And it often doesn't matter what the prize is.
No,
sometimes it does. Sometimes it's just the prize.
Yes.
The prize.
You have to understand the mindset of sales to know that it works.
It's no different than my fantasy football league that I've been in, that I've had for the longest, because it's a lot of friends. It's bragging rights in that group.
Yes.
I mean, I'll take their money too, but
it's just the love of like winning something, like of earning a win, right? Like it's deep in the psyche of anybody who's good at sales. And I will never underestimate how powerful that can be to motivate.
Well, and having wins when you're not having the other kinds of wins is a really good thing, right? Salespeople, as a rule, are driven and motivated by the wins, by making momentum, by closing deals. And when that's not happening, it's easy to get discouraged.
Our psyche matches our experience.
Yeah.
Right. So you have to, we focus so much on the customer experience around it. We have to make sure that the employee experience around it matches what we want them to succeed into as well. Like if it's doldrums and it's hard and everybody's off quota, beating them up is not going to help.
Right.
Getting them in, like you said, with small wins and getting their personal momentum going is just as important as getting like deal momentum going.
When I go back again to this idea of the sales journey, I keep thinking about this more and more. There's the sales journey that you take with your customer during their buyer journey, but there's the sales journey that your salesperson takes throughout the year, right? And summertime is part of that journey. They want to be outside, they want to be golfing, they want to be doing this, they want to be with their kids. They're in the office or nobody's around to talk to or call. Like all of those things are part of our sales journey every year. And the more we can do to stay engaged, to help them feel like they're making progress of some sort matters.
I think also, sorry, Renee.
Oh, no, go ahead, Chris.
I think also reminding them, remember when we went through this last year, right? Because it's sort of like if you live up north and it snows, the first time it snows every year, even when I lived in Boston, you'd think that people had never seen snow before. And it's like, we go through this every year, like the same thing here. We go through this business cycle every year. This happens. I realize that you had something, you thought you had good momentum going. It slowed down a little bit during the summer. This is nothing new. You just gotta, you gotta push through it. So
coach that psyche through the downs, the doldrums. Yeah,
absolutely. We don't get to talk about ghosting until October, right?
That's one thing that we didn't say. And I know not everybody has a culture of this, and I know not everybody has the flexibility to offer it, but flexibility with sales when their world is slower, like it really revolves around doing that one-on-one and doing that gap audit and, understanding where they are, because some of them you can't do it with, but where it makes sense and where you can to offer flexibility, people who are in sales tend to respond, I have seen, to more flexibility better than other departments, but they get into sales because it's part of what attracts them to sales. So I think it is a very good motivator and things that gets them a little more engaged, because when they're present, they're choosing to be present during that time.
Yeah. So Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock on a beautiful sunny afternoon, it really is not much fun to be at the office, right? You're just doing time. You're not doing work. So
Yeah. So like, can you set like, hey, let's all do this by this time and we'll all leave early or whatever, you know, you definitely have to meet the goals and make sure that work is still happening, but little bits of flexibility could go a long way.
absolutely. Absolutely.
I used to have one of my teams. I used to have, they had during the summer. I would tell them, you know, you can. This was for a place where you had to be on site. It's like 2 days a week. You can work from home as long as you don't have any meetings that you need to be in person for. Just let me know so that way when I get the questions, I know how to answer those, right? And this was the same organization that had basically half days on Fridays during the summer. Like every other Friday was a half day.
I was going to bring that up. That is a huge factor for recruitment.
So like being able to say, hey, you go through, you get your stuff done, you're off. You're off early on this day. But again, I think some of it is just being able to look at those things that you're able to do. As long as things are still getting done that need to get done, you shouldn't be as concerned about the rest of it. So.
Yeah.
There are optics that matter and optics that don't. So.
Right. I agree. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up and let you guys go enjoy your beautiful summer days. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. And we will see you in our next episode. Have a great day, everybody, and happy selling. All right.